my pleasure now, and I've gotten the assignment today of 2 introductions, to introduce our next speaker, Governor Tom Vilsack from Iowa. I got to know Governor Vilsack very well in 2004. He was one of the chairs of the Platform Committee, which I was fortunate enough to serve on for the Democratic Party in 2004. And what I found in a time where there has been a lot of debate, as we discussed, about who we are and what we stand for and what our values are and where we're going, that this process of coming up with a platform and really allowing all the various wings and groups in the Democratic Party to sort of weigh in on where we should go is never an easy process, right? And the meetings that we had were led so ably. There were others, but I have vivid memories of Governor Vilsack's incredibly able and agile leadership of what was in some cases complicated and difficult conversations where we didn't always agree on things. And my respect for his leadership, for his thoughtfulness, for his brevity, frankly, his ability to say things in concise, complicated and important ideas and concise and easy ways to understand. He speaks in plain English and not government English. Was that I really grew to respect and admire him in ways from having been close to him that is the kind of thing that it's hard to see from far away. And you all may know that he's been the longest now serving Democratic governor in the country. It says a lot about him. It also says something about the fact that we haven't had great success at the gubernatorial level in recent years, but he's been working doggedly politically to fix that. But more importantly, and I think the thing that I just want to end with, is that he has proven in Iowa, I think one of the core principles of this discussion over this last couple of days, that Democrats know how to use government to make the country better and to solve problems. And the other side simply cannot say that, right? It's a very elemental and simple thing, but it's going to be, I think, one of the most powerful arguments we're going to make going into 06 and 08, that when we are in charge of things, things get better and problems get solved and discussions that are important happen, and that we work in a bipartisan manner towards, using Michael Tomasky's phrase, the common good. Governor Vilsack has done this with great skill and effectiveness in Iowa, whether it's on education or health care, creating economic opportunity, thinking about how we're going to allow rural communities to participate in this global economy in ways that are going to require great amounts of imagination and investment and thoughtfulness. You know, this guy has been a good leader for us and is really an exemplar, I think, of a 21st century party that is really trying to tackle the emerging challenges of our day. So please join me in welcoming a very good man, a very thoughtful leader, somebody that I'm very proud is here with us today, Governor Tom Vilsack of Iowa.
Thank you. Simon, thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning and certainly appreciate that kind introduction. I first of all want to acknowledge the work of the New Democratic Network, particularly in relationship to the outreach efforts with the Latino populations around the country. I think that is extraordinarily important for our party. I come from a state where we've had almost 1,000% population increase in Latinos in our state, and I know that this is an important component to successful campaigning in 2006 and beyond. So I want to thank NDN for doing that. And I want to thank all of you. It's okay, I got one applause. That's good. It's a good start. I want to thank all of you for being here today. You know, I was thinking about my first campaign for governor in Iowa in 1998, and I started it in a number of small communities, and one of those communities was Marshalltown, Iowa. And Marshalltown, Iowa has a wonderful community center, and in front of that community center is a work of art. It is a statue of a man and a child. Now, as you conjure up in your mind's eye such a statue and piece of art, you might think that the man is holding the child in a way that would be protective of the child, holding him close. But in this particular statue, the man is holding the child out from him in a way in which the child can see the future. And I think it's a hopeful and optimistic work of art, and it says a lot about the future of our country. It occurred to me that that statue clearly must have been made during a Democratic administration, because the future was worth looking at when Democrats are in charge. If that work of art were being prepared today in America, it might very well be of a man holding a child very tightly. Given the Republican policies and the anxieties and insecurities that many feel in America today, Democrats, we often talk about working families, but as I travel around the country, I have an opportunity to visit with a lot of worried families. And there are many reasons why people in America today are concerned and may feel a sense of anxiety and insecurity. First of all, there's the economic and employment insecurity that many Americans feel. We are in a global competition. We need a national government that is engaged in that competition, that is crafting policies that will allow us to win that competition. But we've seen very little of that from the Bush administration. There are families who are concerned about the health care insecurity. 46 to 47 million Americans without insurance coverage. Those of us who have insurance coverage concerned about maintaining it because cost and quality issues are not being addressed, again, by our national government. There is the retirement insecurity that many feel. Pensions that were once absolute today are gone. Concerns about the viability of Medicare and Social Security. There's the energy insecurity that some of us feel and see at the pump every day. A country as great and as powerful as this country is dependent on others for their energy supplies. There's the fiscal and financial insecurity that we feel as a country going deeper and deeper in debt, large deficits, a Republican administration that has turned surpluses into debt, and debt that is now being financed in large part by foreign competitors. And there is the personal insecurity that many of us feel, the concern about a new world, a world where we're not confronting another superpower, a world in which we're confronting small groups of folks who want to do harm to us. And looking at the way in which this current administration has addressed Homeland Security, we have reason to be concerned. We still have vivid memories of those who were left behind in Katrina. We have concerns about the fact that one of the major problems with security today is nuclear terrorism and biological terrorism, and very little is being done in this administration about that serious problem. And so it's understandable why we might want to couch our message and phrase our efforts to persuade people to be for Democrats, to vote for Democrats, to support Democrats based on these insecurities. The Republican Party has been a party that has encouraged fear and encouraged a separation, a disintegration of the national community. I believe that Democrats have an enormous responsibility in this election. I think we have a responsibility to reject this politics of fear and anxiety. And I think we need to look for the crafting of our message and the inspiration from our message, not from folks, with all due respect, inside the Beltway, not from pundits, not from consultants, not from pollsters, but from ordinary folks in America who believe in the promise of America, who every day are doing inspiring work. It is those individuals that should help shape our message. And I want to introduce you to just a couple of those folks today. Recently, I had a chance to visit with a Maytag worker. Maytag is a company that used to be a signal company for the state of Iowa. It was located in Newton, Iowa. It was founded in Newton, Iowa. It employed thousands of people. It was recently purchased, and as a result of that purchase, decisions were made, and the result of those decisions, over 900 factory workers and a number of blue and white collar workers were told that they were no longer going to be employed by the company. I talked with one of those Maytag workers. And you might assume that that worker was concerned about the fact that he was going to be unemployed. You might assume that he was going to express anxiety. But this individual worker was talking about the hope and the aspiration and the inspiration he was drawing from being able to start his own business, being his own boss. He has a message for our party. And that message is that we need to speak to those individuals who want to start their own business, who want to be their own boss. We need to speak about an economy that's growing and offers opportunity. Boy, I've got one fan in this audience. When we talk about workers, we often talk about raising the minimum wage and the earned income tax credit, and we should. But we need to talk about more than that. We need to talk about a new social compact between America and its workers. A social compact, for example, that would allow workers a greater voice in the decision-making of corporations. A social compact that understands that there needs to be portability of benefits so that individuals who lose their opportunity at one place have the capacity and the ability to create opportunities elsewhere. We need to talk about investing in the 21st century infrastructure so that those who are interested in building America can do so. Telecommunications, transportation, utilities, the kinds of things that will put us in a position to be competitive, that will allow us to provide a growing economy, that will allow us to focus on the hope of that. Let me tell you about a single mom who works in a clinic that serves the homeless along the Mississippi River. She's a nurse's aide. She came to me one day for the purposes of simply thanking me for a children's health insurance program. She explained it this way: recently divorced, making $8 an hour with no benefits, a 12-year-old child, and she had serious concerns about that child's health care. She was told about our children's health insurance program, the idea that each of us has a collective responsibility to each other, and that's expressed in this children's health insurance program, a sense of community, if you will. She found out about this program and the fact that she could purchase insurance coverage with a small premium and have the pride of being able to provide health insurance for her child. Shortly after she got health insurance, her child broke her wrist, shattered her wrist. It was a terrible, terrible accident. The result was that this young lady had to have several surgeries. This woman wanted to thank me, wanted to thank all of you for believing in the responsibility of community to provide health insurance coverage for her child, because she was convinced that without that program, her child's wrist would never have been fixed properly and she might have had to live with a deformity. We should listen. We should listen to that single mom, because she's talking about the importance of community and how it's expressed in government policies and how those policies can make a difference. And maybe that might encourage us to look at creative and innovative ways to develop a comprehensive health insurance strategy that speaks to the 46 million uninsured Americans, that talks about the need to look at costs and quality so that our health insurance system is no longer a competitive drag. We need to listen to those who are living inspired lives. Entrepreneur Ravi is an immigrant, came to this country about 15 years ago from India. He's made a successful business for himself. We need to listen to him as well. I asked him, why did you leave your native country? What encouraged you to come to America? He said, well, as a youngster, he used to hear about this country called America. Its leaders talked about how it was a great nation. In fact, its leaders talked and its people believed that it was the greatest nation on earth. And he simply wanted to be part of that. He wanted to be part of a nation that inspired people. And so he came to America to pursue his dreams. We need to listen to people like Ravi. We need to recognize that there's a message there, that our party should be the party of hope. It should be the party of an inspiring America, not an America that makes others fearful. We have a big challenge ahead of us, and we should accept that challenge. Every challenge should be accepted by America. One challenge we should accept, one challenge we should say to the rest of the world we're willing to accept, is energy independence. By being independent, we not only will help ourselves, but we'll encourage other nations to diversify their economy and maybe lead to a safer and more secure world. We need to send a message about America that is an inspiring message. When I traveled to India and I saw this wonderful country with this huge paradox, the world's largest middle class, but also home to 1/2 of all the malnourished children in the world, I said to the Prime Minister of India, what can we do about the children who are hungry here and in my country and around the world? He said, well, make sure that you understand that there's a connection between literacy and nutrition. The more literate moms and dads are, the greater the chances are that children will be well cared for. Why can't America be a nation that says to the international community that we should attack world hunger in our country and in all countries? We should focus on literacy, and it should be our goal to lead the rest of the world in an effort to make sure that children are fed and that children can read. That would be an America that inspires. That would be an America that no one would fear. That would be an America that we all can take hope from. Listening to the people out around the country is how we should craft our message. There are a lot of innovative and creative ways to communicate message, and there are a lot of interesting and innovative strategies about message. But our party should never fail to stop listening to ordinary people, because that is who we are, and that is what America is. Let me suggest to you that we have a challenge as we relate and communicate with the rest of the nation. The challenge clearly is for us to convey a sense of strength, a party that will in fact keep Americans safe. And I think we ought to couch this in terms of the competency of the Democrats to deal with homeland security issues. There are a litany of problems and concerns I could review today with you, if time permitted, of the incompetency of the current administration. But I think Democrats can make a strong case that we can more competently keep people safe, and that's how we ought to frame this debate and conversation. It ought to be framed on our terms, not on someone else's terms. We also ought to be the party that recognizes, if we're going to compete in a global economy, that we're going to have the most innovative and creative young people in the world. And while I'm just going to get that man's name. Today's education policy really is nothing more than an underfunded slogan. We do not need a nation of standardized test takers. We need a nation of creative and thoughtful citizens and people. And we need a system that will produce that. Now, lest you think that Democrats can't do all of this, I would suggest you take a tour of states where Democrats have been governors. In my state, we've improved education, we've expanded access to health care, we've encouraged a growing economy, we've embraced renewable fuels, we lead the nation in wind energy, we've created a record number of jobs, we haven't raised taxes, we've actually cut taxes every year, we've reduced the size of government, but we've made it more efficient. And that story is being replayed all across the country where Democrats are in control of state houses. It can be replicated here. This is an important time for our party. All of this can be done if our message is right. All of this can be done if we convey that message with a sense of strength and confidence. All of this can be done if we do one additional thing, which is to ask Americans to be engaged with us in building and energizing this country, in creating a new America. That's going to require sacrifice. It won't be easy. It'll be very difficult. And we ought to be straight with folks about that. And we ought to tell folks about people who are making sacrifices so that they know that there are many of us willing to do so. Let me tell you about one other person we should listen to. As governor, I happen to be a commander-in-chief of 9,700 troops. That's a job I take very seriously. They're members of our National Guard. These are people that are extraordinary individuals. They take themselves away from their families and their friends and their homes and their secure communities, and they go halfway across the world to do a very dangerous job, and willingly do it because they believe in this country. Of the 9,700 people that have been in my National Guard, 80% of them have been deployed somewhere around the world in the last 4 or 5 years. 42 of them have not come back. As a governor, I've got a responsibility when that happens. A responsibility to communicate in some way the gratitude and the sympathies of 3 million Iowans. I call the families. I spend time visiting with them. I will remember all of those conversations and visits, including the one I had last week, the mother of the first woman who died. She was upset. She was crying, not just because her daughter had been killed, but because her son was in the military and his son had a wife and 2 children. And they wanted to be part of the grieving process. They wanted to be part of the funeral. But they couldn't afford to get to Iowa from California. And she cried about that. We solved that problem. I will always remember these conversations, but the one I will never forget is the one that I had with Leva Smith. Mrs. Smith was married to Bruce Smith, who was 42 years of age. Bruce had been in the National Guard for over 20 years. He was the grandfather, if you will, of the National Guard. He was the guy that 18 and 19-year-olders looked up to, the fellow that they went to for advice. Bruce, once again, when his nation called him, took himself away from that lovely wife and his 2 great kids and his small community of West Liberty, Iowa, and he went to Baghdad. Now, his job there was to fly a helicopter. And having recently been there, I understand a little bit about the nature of that job. It's not an easy job. One day, as he was flying his helicopter, it was hit with a missile. Now, Bruce had a split-second decision to make. He could decide whether to put his life at risk and his co-pilot's life at greater risk in the hopes of maybe saving some folks on board. Or he could maybe save his life and put those on board at risk. Nobody would ever really know. Well, he did what he was trained to do. He did what you would expect him to do. He did what I proudly can say an Iowan would do. He put his own life at risk and that of his co-pilots. And he and his co-pilot died that day. 18 people lived. 18 people lived that day. And my job was to call Mrs. Smith. Now, I suspect that there are people here, I know there are journalists here, and maybe there are folks here who themselves have dabbled with poetry and writing essays and stories and using words. You know the words, sacrifice and thoughts and prayers. But nobody really has crafted the words that can convey to a mother who now finds herself having to raise 2 children by herself. No one can convey really what that must be like, or even be able to sympathize with her. I did my best, but it wasn't very good. And she realized, as I struggled through this conversation, the difficulty I was having, and she interrupted me. And she said, "Governor, I've got this figured out." I thought to myself, how could you have it figured out? Well, she said, "I've got it figured out." She said, "The way I've got it figured, those 18 men who survived that day needed Bruce more in that split second than I'll need him the rest of my life." Well, we talked for a few more minutes, and I put the phone down. This conversation took place in my office. It's a beautiful office. I've got a beautiful big office. I've got an office befitting a guy with a title. But I realized I'd been in presence of greatness. This ordinary woman was an extraordinary woman. She understood intuitively what makes this country great. She understood that there is a higher purpose that we serve, that there's a mission that this country has, that from time to time throughout the history of this country, people have been asked to sacrifice for it, and they've been willing to do that. She understood that that was part of her responsibility as a member of this American community. And while it pained her and it grieved her and she felt deep sorrow, She understood that there was a purpose to be served by her sacrifice. That's what's made this country great. The willingness of people to understand that there is a higher purpose and a willingness for us to sacrifice for it. And this current administration had two great opportunities to bring this country together. Following 9/11 and following Katrina, most of us would have done virtually anything we had been asked to do. But we had a failure of leadership. We weren't asked to do anything. We weren't asked to sacrifice. We weren't asked to come together. We weren't asked to work in common purpose. We weren't told about a higher purpose. We were asked nothing. And history will judge this administration very poorly for that. But it places the onus on us, on Democrats, to begin to touch in each of us that which already exists. An understanding that while we are strong individually, we are also stronger when we work collectively in community. I believe in this country. I believe in its promise. I believe in its hope. No matter how desperate the circumstances may be under the current administration, I believe there is greatness all around us. We need simply to engage it, to ask of ordinary Americans to work with us to make sure that we live up to that higher purpose that Mrs. Smith understood. And by listening to folks like Mrs. Smith, we can craft a message, a compelling message, and we can put together programs and policies that make a difference in people's lives. And we can make America the country it was meant to be. We can take America to a better place, the place that all of us know it belongs. I believe in America. I started out life as an orphan, and here I am today as a governor, speaking to people who are committed about the future of this country. I have no choice but to believe in this country. And I suspect all of you here also believe in this country. So I'm encouraging you. Look at all the technology and the blogs and the internet and all of that. But let's not forget to listen to those ordinary folks out there, because that's where the inspiration is. That's where the hopes are. That's where the energy is. And that's where America is at its best. Thank you very much. Time? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. We have a present.
Oh, okay.
Governor, you may not have been here earlier, but everyone who's been speaking, we've been giving them a present. This is a soccer jersey from our new campaign, the Mas Camp Partito campaign that we're running in Spanish. You all can see here is the jersey, and we've got Vilsack on the back.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Wear it in good health.
Thank you.
As a souvenir of your time here.
Thank you very much. I apologize for taking so
No. Can we give the governor a big round of applause?
Thank you.